Hi there. Do you all hear us online now?
I do, yes,
Awesome. Thank you, James. Hello. Thanks for joining.
of course.
Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Um, First, I want to say happy Grad Student Appreciation Week to any grad students we have here. And thank you to our incredible alumni panel for joining us tonight. What we will do is Annie Hecker, our student, has some questions prepared that she can ask, and then we'll have time for Q&A. So if you are online, if you can just put your questions in the chat, or you can join in verbally, whatever you'd like to do when it's time to ask questions, that would be great. So at this time, I will introduce our facilitator, Annie Hecker, who is a Master of Tourism Management student in our department and also an active member of our GSO, our graduate student organization.
Hello, everyone. I'm Annie. So I'm going to kick us off with our first question of the night, and I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves. So for the first two questions, I'm just going to have each person answer in order going down the line. And then after that, feel free to jump in, answer whatever questions at any point you'd like. So for the first question, it's can you just share your name, what's your job title and organization you're part of, what program you graduated from, and what drew you to that program?
I start?
Yep, go ahead.
My name is Mike Schmidt. I am the Senior Manager of Resort Marketing at Vail Resorts. I graduated from the Masters of Tourism Management program, so good choice. And yeah, what drew me to the program initially was really initially was the fact that it was one, tourism, and two, that it was kind of a low barrier to entry. It was a 2-semester program. There were some classes that you could take online, and no GRE was required, which was a big draw to me at the time. And as I kind of did more research in it and everything, it like really struck a chord with me because it had a really wide scope of education, from anything from just like research and analytics to practical application. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up at the time, and so I was really drawn to the fact that there was like a big scope of like what I could learn and help me kind of figure out where I wanted to go.
Great. Thank you. Hi, I'm Emily Barbo. I'm currently the Public Information Officer at the Colorado State Land Board, which is a state agency based out of the Department of Natural Resources. And another way of saying Public Information Officer is Outreach and Communications Manager. So sometimes PIO doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people. I graduated from the Communications for Conservation Graduate Certificate program. And I had a strong background in marketing and communications, largely in the nonprofit sector, but some for-profit work as well, but never in the conservation space. And so there was I thought, a gap in my knowledge around the language of conservation that I needed to be successful working in this field, which has always been my dream. So that drew me to the program. Also, the fact that I could do it online, part-time nights, kind of self-paced program. So I worked full-time through the program, building that knowledge and those translation skills, as I like to call it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Evan Briscoe. I was previously the CWPP project manager with the Ember Alliance. So those are community wildfire protection plans. I'm still working in that capacity, but I just recently got a promotion to GIS program manager. So very excited about that. Thank you. What drew me, my program that I graduated from was Master of Conservation Leadership, or CLTL. And the reason that I was drawn to that program was I didn't have any background in the conservation or natural resource space. And so I was looking to do a career change. And this program offered a breadth of experience through, we would do field days every week. And so you'd be interacting with natural resource practitioners and other folks working in the conservation space. I felt like that would be a really good way to get my foot in the door. I also had just gotten back from the Peace Corps. I really liked this program. It took, a human-focused approach to problems with natural resources. And that was something that was like near and dear to my heart, is looking at things from a more systems perspective and taking into account the people that are living in these areas and how, we can't accomplish what we're trying to do if we don't take into consideration their needs and where they're at as well. So really drew me to the program for that reason.
That's super cool. Hey y'all, I'm Micah Warners. I currently work for the City of Fort Collins. I'm a lead specialist doing education and outreach in the areas of air quality and waste diversion, so like recycling and composting. And I did a master's in human dimensions of natural resources. Previously, I was a high school teacher. I taught at urban in Detroit. I did a Fulbright in Honduras. And during those 5 years of teaching, I kept being curious about like what actually changes behavior. And so I would see my students learn about something, and that was kind of where it ended. And thinking about myself too, like it's really hard for me to change my own habits. And so I was looking for a program that had behavior change components where I could study that. I also was really interested in more in the environmental education realm. And so this program really worked out because my TA-ship was like sort of managing a environmental ed program. It wasn't a traditional like grade and teach a class type TA-ship. So those things drew me to HDNR.
Hi everyone, I'm Veronica Champine Stone. I actually did 2 of the programs in HDNR. So I was straight out of undergrad. I had this idea that I was going to become a teacher. And then all of a sudden I took a social psychology class and I was like, wait, social psychology is really cool. And then I learned that there's such thing as environmental psychology. And I was like, this is really cool. And so I worked with a PhD student at my undergraduate institution. He somehow had some listserv that had conservation leadership as a program on it. And I said, okay, this will help me kind of get a little bit more of an understanding of what environmental psychology means and what I could do with that as a career. Even though that's a very small part of CLTL because it's so interdisciplinary, you learn about everything from systems thinking to communications to all the things you could possibly want in a conservation career. But then I had this idea in the back of my head that I wanted to do a PhD at some time. Didn't really know what that meant. I was young. And so I was like, okay, I can do this master's program, see if I like grad school, see what happens. I ended up getting a job as a research assistant with Rebecca Nemec in the department. And that was during my master's program. So I was able to work as well, be part-time. And then she ended up having an opening that worked really well for me to continue and do my PhD here. So I did that. And yeah, I don't know. I wasn't really looking for something specific. I was just kind of following a path that seemed really cool at the time. And it has led me to a cool job. I didn't say what that was. So now I'm a quantitative researcher at a nonprofit called BITE, which stands for Building Impact Through Eaters. So I'm actually not in natural resources conservation anymore, but I'm more in the food sector, which is really cool because our mission is to make plant-forward eating the norm through behavioral science. So I get to use my behavioral science degree and use applied psychology and run studies, but work in a nonprofit. And so it's all cool. So happy to answer questions about the nonprofit world too.
Well, thank you guys so much. It's so interesting to see what drew you to the program and where you guys are now. So for our next question, feel free to answer this question at any order, by the way. It's where were you in your career when you started the program and what gap or need were you looking to fill? So I know some of you have already answered that question, but which is great. But if you have any other things to add, be much appreciated.
I can start.
Yeah, let's fly down the line again.
There we go.
So yeah, I was when I found the program, I was doing a lot of seasonal work. I was a ski bum and then doing a lot of outdoor recreation in the summers, and wanted a quote unquote real job. And so MTM program spoke to me because it was like in the outdoor recreation world and in the tourism world, and so I could really apply that experience directly to what I was working on. yeah, like I said, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so the MGM program like helped me kind of get an idea of what I was good at and what I enjoyed. And so it was very helpful when I was just kind of ski bumming around.
I can relate to that.
Slightly different for me. Like I said, I've been working in marketing and communications for about 10 years, a little more than that, actually, before I found the program. But I spent the bulk of that time working in public health, and I was living in Massachusetts. And so I was part of the state of Massachusetts emergency response to COVID. And I was focused a lot on emergency comms at that time. Burned out pretty hard. Living through a global pandemic was challenging for all of us, any of us, and feeling responsible for the health and well-being of my community was challenging. And like I said before, I'd always had the ambition and the goal to move into the environmental space with my career. So after finishing my master's, I got an MBA back in Boston. I moved to Colorado. And my goal was to shift both my physical location and my career. So luckily I had a great relationship at BU, Boston University, where I got my master's and did a lot of that public health work. And so working here at CSU turned into a natural progression of a way that I could, still stay in academia. It made sense with the resume that I had, but start inching towards that environmental career and also coming to Colorado, which was a huge goal. And then I found the program, which was fantastic because, like I said, I had this language gap. I had a lot of the jargon, the business background of communications, but not a lot of the environmental science or just some of the other like jargon and quirks of conservation and some of that psychology that we've been talking about. And the other big gap that I had was a network. I knew that communications, this is my passion. I'm an extroverted person and I'll talk your ear off all day long. But I needed the network of folks to one, help me find that next career path. I made it to Colorado, but was I in the right job for the long term? Turns out no. So I also wanted this program to help me build some of those relationships of like the people on this panel. The diversity of experiences, of industries, of education that I would help one continue my education, but also my professional and personal network, living in a new place for the first time. So those were my context kind of coming into the program.
Well, thanks for sharing. I can relate to that one too. My undergrad was in business management.
Yeah.
So like that shift to expanding your mind and understanding the communications is super important.
Thanks.
Thanks for sharing. What's the next one?
Yeah, so I had recently gotten back from the Peace Corps and was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I was back in my hometown in Indiana and really kind of struggling to find a job that fit in with my interest and ignited the passion that I felt while working in the Peace Corps. And so I was also teaching. So I was a high school teacher at the time and teaching through COVID and then was on an emergency permit. And it got to a point where either I go back to school for teaching or I pivot and do something different. And one of my favorite projects in the Peace Corps was a emphasis on conservation and was able to take my students on a field trip to a national reserve in Mozambique, the country I was in. And it was pretty life-changing for them, but also for me, and just realizing that's the space I wanted to work in. And I didn't have a background, similarly was looking for that network of folks that had those similar passions and also were working in that field. And then I also wanted, a base knowledge to be able to be knowledgeable and be able to step into the field of conservation. And so this program, for one, they actually offered a scholarship for returned Peace Corps volunteers. So that was a big plus for me. But then it also, just the breadth of the program, they covered so many different aspects of conservation and natural resource management that I felt like it would give me a really good base. And we also did field days every week. And so we got to actually get out in the field, see conservation in practice and meet those practitioners as well. And so that helped to for me, that's what I was looking for, to help build my network and be surrounded by like-minded people that were passionate about this field and that, would help me to grow and I could help them to grow as well and to that. So, yeah.
Sweet. Yeah. I definitely didn't have it figured out starting my program, the grad school program. I knew I wanted to learn more about behavior change, learn more about informal education, environmental education. But beyond that, I really didn't have like, this job is what I want to do after I finish. I actually wanted to do a PhD initially, and my advisor kind of pushed back on that a little bit. He said, like, let's start with a master's, see how that goes, see if you actually like the research part of things. And so I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'll start with a master's, and ended up like mastering out of not doing my PhD, which worked for me and my goals. And I was able to, through the program, get more experience in environmental education. I ran a program with the Thompson School District, doing field trips for fourth graders at Bobcat Ridge, which was really fun. And then also doing research in behavior change space really also helped me get skills and understanding in that area, which I apply now a lot to my job at the City of Fort Collins. So yeah, I definitely did not have things like all figured out, planned to a T when I started.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this, and I feel like a lot of my reasons for going into either of the programs that I did have been covered, like what Evan said, both of you said, was that network piece was really important. I had no environmental, and as you know, I had a couple jobs in undergrad where I was doing a little environmental education, but I didn't feel like I had the kind of the science behind it as well. So I got that out of the master's. And then I learned that I loved research. And so I'd say if you're at all interested in a PhD, you really, really gotta love research. I loved what I was doing. It was very applied. It wasn't as theoretical. I learned that I like a little more of a quantitative perspective, even though I like really appreciate all mixed methods and qualitative. That's just how my brain works. And so yeah, like it was an opportunity that I took. It was also very nice because it was COVID, and what else do I have to do during COVID than read papers and be by myself in my PhD? So like the timing worked out nicely for me. But yeah, I'm trying to, there wasn't like it just kind of happened because I was already in the HDNR world. Like the network worked for me, so.
There we go. We've got the desire for the network and then how the network created the opportunity for PhD. Awesome. So the next question is, how did you balance the program with work, family, and other commitments? And what aspects of the program made that possible? Hope you'd like.
I can start again. Yeah, I balanced it pretty successfully. I mean, I was working 3 or 4 part-time jobs at any given moment through the program. So clearly there was a little bit of free time in between. I think what worked was that the program was like pretty spread out. The classes were pretty spread out throughout the week. There was a lot of, homework and essays and research and everything, but I was very familiar with that just from my undergrad. And so it was pretty easy for me to be able to transition into that, obviously with a few years of ski bumming in between, but it was still pretty easy for me to figure that out and work a few part-time jobs. And then my girlfriend at the time is now my wife. So clearly it worked, like the relationship piece balanced as well. So yeah, I think it was definitely tough, and it was a challenging year for sure, but that was part of the appeal, was that it was only that 9 months to a year. And that was how I was able to make it work.
I'll break the order. I would say that I think I balanced, I'll speak on PhD now. So I feel like I balanced it by just treating it as a job. And the PhD is, I'd say, more of a job because I didn't know this as an undergrad, so I'm just saying this, is that a lot of the time you can get funding to be a PhD. So you can do a TA, or you can be a graduate assistant or a researcher. So you are paid a stipend or an amount of money. It's not necessarily enough to always live on. I think things have changed though, and things are better now. But yeah, so I treated it as the job that it was. And then I had a partner who is now my husband, so that was also successful. I also worked. I was a fitness instructor at the rec center. And so I kept myself busy, and I used that office even during COVID when there was no one in the building. I went in and I did my work, and then I left at 5 p.m. and I treated it that way, and that was helpful for me. And then balancing classes and everything I was used to from doing that in my master's as well.
Yeah, I think Veronica's inspiring me. My experience was a little bit different. So I was in a certificate program, right? So my main priority was my day job. And that was where I had to do my prioritization from 9 to 5. But I'm going to cheat and kind of get into some of the later questions. I'm a strong believer that in really any relationship, but especially a work professional relationship, if you treat somebody like an adult, they'll act like one. And that was always the tone that Jamie, our faculty, set. So I had the syllabus in front of me, and I knew that we had an assignment due the same day as my international symposium, which I was running the comms for. And I was like, there's just no way. It's just not going to happen. So before the deadline, I reached out to my professor and said, I've got a problem. Can I have an extra day to get the assignment to you? And her response was, how about an extra week to get the assignment in? And I was like, great, perfect. So I had to make some trade-offs, and some of it was hard. And I didn't do all of the reading. I just couldn't. It's just not possible. I still have it, and I have aspirations to go back and read it all. But I just had to do some different decision making, and I made all of those decisions in consultation with my faculty member, with Jamie. So that I could stay successful in the class and get the most out of it that I could.
Yeah, I think echoing those sentiments, our faculty was very supportive, and if you came to them and had an honest discussion about that, they wanted to see you succeed.
Yeah.
And so that was something where it was like, yes, we had deadlines, but life happens. And so for me, I have family back in Indiana. There were certain life events that happened where I needed to go back and be with family. And I reached out and talked to them ahead of time. And they were able to be flexible and also offer, like a virtual option for me. So I didn't miss class, or the way that we turned in some of our assignments are oftentimes online. And so that really helped out, just having the supportive faculty, and then communication was huge. You communicate early, and you're an adult with them, they'll help you to succeed in that position. And I think for me too, this was something that I had made a decision. I want to change my career for this. So I really did focus in on it, and I made that my priority. And so as far as balancing work and school and family and those things, you really get out of it what you put in. But then when those life things happen, faculty was very supportive and wanted to see you succeed.
Yeah, I think the joke I'll make about that is I think we have enough character, right? We've all decided that we're going to do this endeavor and we're going to give it our best shot. I don't think anybody is like, oh, well, we're going to make sure that we build this person's character by making them have this really difficult deadline. Yeah. No, we've learned that lesson already. I think we've made it over that hill. So there was no sense of rigidity or to prove a point. The goal was to create the environment where we were going to learn the most that we could. And if having a virtual option or changing a deadline or whatever was going to help us succeed, then that's what would happen. It took me a hot second to get used to it, but it was really helpful. And I think I was able to get so much more out of the program because of it.
I felt that flexibility a lot when a year into my program, 2-year program, I got a job offer from City Fort Collins, and I was like, I really want to do this job, and I really want to do grad school and finish it. I'm really nervous to talk to like any professors about this, but they're all so understanding, and I was so humbled by just their willingness to support me and let me skip, certain TA classes or do work in the evenings or extend my master's. I ended up graduating not in May like a lot of my colleagues, but in the end of the summertime. And so that flexibility was really, really awesome. And it was an awful year, but it was also amazing.
You got it done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, one day at a time.
Yeah, one thing that's very great about these programs is the support you receive, how flexible they're willing to be, and just the overall, it's pretty great. And the two-way communications, great. So how would you describe your experience with faculty? This is kind of, we may not, we'll just skip through that one. You guys have been wonderful at answering that one. So how were you able to directly apply your coursework to your professional work or personal experience or personal interests?
I mean, I kind of hinted on this, but my dissertation is on environmental behavior change. So how do you get somebody to do something, or in my case, how do you get somebody to talk to somebody else and motivate them to do something? And so with all of my CLTL conservation leadership program, I was in, like, my project was a summer breakfast program where I ran it and I evaluated it, and I got to hang out with kids all summer, and it was amazing and applied. And then this dissertation that was like theoretical but still applied, and running these experiments and seeing how behaviors changed, and mailing people things and all these logistical things. So, like, what was the actual question? Oh, yes. Okay. So I had all these experiences in grad school. And it led me to not only understand the behavioral science behind everything, but actually be able to carry it out in the real world, which is what we do. We work with food service companies, and we pretty much train them, is not the right word, but we help them learn about, like, kind of nudge strategies, or like things that they can do within their dining halls. Like think about a university dining hall. If you offer more of these types of foods and less of these types of foods, people might not notice that it's happening, but their behavior might shift because they're able. So, like, I am literally able to take what I've learned in theory and apply it in my own work, and still run experimental studies and do quantitative research. So it's very much applied. I don't know how I got this job. So I'm just very happy.
We do. You did the program.
I did this program.
Yes,
it works. Maybe to echo what Veronica said, I definitely apply a lot of behavior change tactics and thinking to my work. How do we get people to recycle more? How do we get people to recycle correctly? How do we decrease anti-idling with vehicles, et cetera, et cetera? I will say I didn't start in this job right after this program or during this program. It took me like a couple years to find myself in this position and kind of form this position. I started off doing more education in classrooms and that kind of thing. So it did take me a little bit longer to get to where I am now. The other thing that I feel like, what's the question again? Oh, coursework. I feel like grad school really helped me too. Maybe I'm a professional, but also personal journey of understanding that my experience is not everyone's experience, and my privilege is not everyone's privilege. And how can we think about that when we design programs and education initiatives? And so my first year, especially of grad school, when I wasn't working full time, it was a lot of awesome conversations with other students, going to happy hour, we had a little lunch club, chat about what we were learning. And so I feel like, grad school really helped me in that journey that I'm obviously still on, but just thinking about how everyone has different experiences and how we can think about that when we design programs.
Yeah, I really like what you said there. like for me, I guess the coursework was not only the content of it, but also the format of it. And so what I feel like our program did a really nice job of is we oftentimes worked in groups. And so that did, like some of the groups almost seemed like a setup for a bar joke of like, you know, a drama major, a chemistry major, and an environmental science major walk into the bar. But it really was like we had people from all different backgrounds in our program. And so you really do, not only are you challenged in your thinking, but you also develop empathy for other people just by working with, you know, a diversity of folks on your team. And I think that format, we worked so much in teams with our coursework that like right now I am working with, I'm a project manager on something, I'm working with a GIS analyst, I'm working with community members, and you're working with so many different people. And that really set me up for success of learning not only how to be successful with a project, but also how to communicate to different people and change your communication strategies based off of who you're talking to. And then I think too, the content of it. I love the systems perspective. I just like thinking about all the different factors that actually come into play when we're looking at a lot of these natural resource or conservation issues. And that has helped me so much in my job because I've been able to take some of these really complex processes and break them down to like what all goes into this so that we can either improve it or tailor it to help the person that we're working with or the communities that we're working with. So I think the content of what we learned in our program, as well as the format, was just like really, really well thought out and set me up for success working in this career path in this realm.
Yeah, I'll echo what you just said. I think the content and format for the MTM program was exactly what I needed as well, and it's helped me a ton in my career as well. Just like the content being, you know, we were studying the kind of theme of the program when I was in it. I'm not sure if it's still the case, but you're kind of designing your own business as you go through it, and then you're also kind of working. Each class kind of gives you a different idea of like what a different department or a different company would kind of how it would run. And so it was really interesting to get an idea of like, you know, where the research and analytics team was coming from, or where the like ski and ride school team was coming from, or like the rentals team. I obviously had a lot of classes that were focused on ski areas. So, and then like where hospitality and hotels are coming from. And so it's helped me a ton in my career working with different stakeholders and different departments and everything, just to make sure that like, you know, I understand where they're coming from. I understand what's on their plate to an extent, and can kind of give my input on how our departments will interact or anything like that. And then directly from the coursework that I did, we had projects that were, you know, looking at spreadsheets, which I do a lot of in my current job, and figuring out the analytics there and putting together a PowerPoint presentation on that and presenting that to the board of directors or whoever it is. And I do a lot of that in my current job as well. So there's a lot of really practical application of things that I am currently doing. In addition to that content and that research and understanding where everyone was coming from in different roles.
Thank you. I know Micah and Evan talked a little bit about the role that their peers play in this program, but does anyone else, and if you want to add some more, want to add anything about what your experience was like with the peers in your program?
I can start. I mean, yeah, I think same thing. There were people from a ton of different backgrounds. I think we had like a German ballerina. We had someone who was coming from like working the last 10 years and just wanted a different perspective on things. Ski bum. We had some students from China and just like coming from all different worlds. And it was awesome to get that perspective and worked with those people. And then, you know, there'd be, I honestly don't stay in touch with them that as much as I'd like to anymore, but during the program, we were all besties. We would, you know, go get happy hour and work on our projects. And there's that sweet spot of 2 IPAs when you're really, really focused on it. And just make sure you end it afterwards. But like, yeah, it ends just like we'd go camping and we would go, you know, to parties together, or we would just like sit down and have study sessions or lunch sessions and everything. So it was awesome. It was really cool bringing all these people together to focus on the same kind of presentation or the same topics while we all have these different perspectives on the world.
My program's designed a little bit differently. So the C4C, the Communications for Conservation program, is fully remote. And it's asynchronous. So you do the majority, it's a lot of recordings, you do the majority of the work on your own time. And it's kind of self-paced. But we would come together And we use this tool of, we submit through Handshake, through the learning portal, our assignments, and we would give each other feedback. And the thoughtfulness and care with which my classmates provided feedback on my work was incredible and evident and so valuable to me. And it made me double down on the feedback that I was giving, right? I was reinvesting my own time in their success and their work as well. And the funny part is I met more of my classmates after the program ended than while it was going on. So I've built relationships with several of the local students. A lot of people were remote and not in the state. A lot of folks who are like thinking about career transitions. I've had people ask me to review their resume with them. I've had people ask me to like practice interview questions with them. I had one person who was like, I'm not sure this is the right job. Like, should I apply? And we like talked through what that looks like. The answer was yes, always apply. So that's been like the kind of interesting evolution of this was it could have been very easy for my classmates to remain fairly invisible to me, but that wasn't the result, which was heartening.
That's really neat to get the online student perspective, because a lot of our programs are online as well.
Yeah, I'll add just after the program, I still get LinkedIn messages from my cohort, and they're like, hey, I know you work at Vail Resorts, or hey, we have this job opening. I know you're in marketing. Like, are you interested? That kind of thing. And so it's nice to have those connections with people who are, are hardworking and dedicated and everything. So.
Yeah, +1. And for conservation leadership, that's a cohort. Like we were close. Like we were spending every day together, and I still have really, really good friends. I got really lucky in my Ph.D. to be able to become friends and go to lunch club in the Sherwood Forest. We made our own kind of cohort, even though we were small, and all kind of working on different things. But yeah, it's just so important to have that, and then have that network after, because it just continues to even if it's just a social network, but also a professional network. Because like if I wanted to work at the city of Fort Collins, I'd hit him up. It would be great. You did. Politics. No, but just that extra, he might know somebody. It just compounds.
Yeah, speaking of that too, I was also CLTL, so we got really tight cohort group. And honestly, how I got my position that I'm in now was one of my friends from the cohort. She was working at the Ember Alliance, and I had just gotten laid off from a cabinet company job that I didn't want to be working in. And she suggested applying, and that's how I got into the situation there. But I also think that with that cohort setup, and people coming from so many different backgrounds there, it was so nice how supportive that group was. And for me, I felt really out of my element stepping into the program because I had no background in environmental science or natural resource or conservation. And while there were a lot of people that did have a background in that, there were also other people like me who were coming into that for the first time. And we were able to get very comfortable with each other and have really hard, honest conversations in class, and felt like I was able to contribute even though I didn't have that background. And so my fellow students were super supportive. I formed like really close friendships, keep in touch with a lot of the folks from my cohort to this day. Was actually best man in one of their weddings this summer. So that was awesome. So really great experience. And, my fellow cohort members were super supportive and good friends.
Congratulations.
Nice.
And just to touch on the bridging between the different programs at the GSO, one thing that we're working on is creating that connection and the networking across CLTL, Masters in Natural Resource, Ph.D, and MTM. So every first Friday of the month, we have happy hour. And it changes every semester. But it's a cool opportunity to really get to know people within HDNR, but in different programs. Some of my closest friends here are in CLTL, and I'm in MTM. So there's that connection as well.
CLTL is what we say for conservation leadership.
Yes, thank you. Conservation leadership. Awesome.
That didn't used to happen, that crossover. I've been here a while.
It's exciting.
That is exciting.
Yeah.
Good job.
I started that. I remember going to a social event and there really wasn't others like that. But
Okay,
that
sounds
was-
Yeah, so skip the.
Oh, those people-
Yeah. Awesome. So for the next question is, how has earning this degree impacted your career trajectory? Were there new opportunities or promotion or career transition?
Start off. I think honestly, all three of those, new opportunities, career transition, and a promotion. One, again, I kind of touched on the conservation leadership or CLTL, the breadth that we cover within that program. And what I really appreciate about that is on different assignments and things like that, you could really dive deep into certain subjects that you were really interested in. And so for me, I dove deep a lot on like the conservation agriculture side. And I also was interested in GIS or geospatial modeling. And so from my experience with this program, that was actually where I first heard about the Ember Alliance, the organization I'm now with. Helped me to transition my career from I have a chemistry background, was teaching, and now I'm working in the conservation space. And then also just recently stepped into a new position as a GIS program manager, and being able to explore those interests through my coursework. I really got a lot of experience that I was able to apply to my position, which led me to that GIS program management position that I'm in now.
Yeah, similarly for me, immediately after graduating, actually, we had done a tour of a hotel and met with the GM, and she kind of introduced us to her staff and like showed us around. And I actually ended up getting a job immediately after I graduated with that hotel because I had that relationship with the GM. So a very much direct pipeline there. But outside of that, having the tourism degree really helped give me a leg up when I was applying to jobs, especially within the ski industry. A lot of the connections I made with guest presenters or some of the faculty. One of the faculty who was there at the time is actually one of my major mentors and knows a ton of people in the ski industry, and so has introduced me to some people that when I've been applying for jobs, or some of the people who the guest presenters would I'd like reach out to them and be like, hey, you presented to me a year ago. Are you interested in hiring me? And they were often very open to like looking at my resume and helping give me advice on how to apply and how to interview and everything. And so it's definitely been super beneficial. In addition to all of the coursework and skills that I learned, I think those connections have been a lifesaver in my career.
Yeah, I think I made a job transition shortly after I graduated. And I think, honestly, one of the most impactful parts of the program was it gave me the confidence to say yes to a job I wasn't sure on my own I had the skills or the ability to take on. But I was just remembering with Jamie before this session started, we went for a walk one day and I was like, look, I really want to do media relations, but I don't have a lot of background doing that. And this is there's a job. This is a big part of that job. Like, is it irresponsible of me to take this job if I don't have that background? And she was like, what are you talking about? Take the job. Like, you can do this. And there were a lot of opportunities for me in the program to kind of step up as a subject matter expert. I've got a career behind me of experiences. And just because I'm in a course, in a program, in a certificate program, doesn't negate that. I could actually contribute to the education of my peers. So it gave me this incredible sense of, honestly, confidence and self-awareness to say yes to something that I don't think I would have said yes to otherwise. And it's incredibly challenging, but I'm growing so much and I'm really happy with now that I'm with this position at the state. So I owe that in a large part to the relationship I have with Jamie, and I wouldn't have had it if I didn't do this certificate.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the professors that I knew at least were so plugged in everywhere and just like knew everybody in this space.
Yeah.
And so that was really helpful for me too. I happened to interview with somebody at the City of Fort Collins who used to work for the board or for the organization that my advisor was on the board of. And so like, did that help? Probably, to some degree, maybe a lot more than I realized. And otherwise, I think for me at least, I think the degree itself, like the MS, mattered less. And what mattered more was the experiences that I did have during grad school. And so like before grad school, I could say like, I've taught high school science, and that's great. And then after grad school, I could say I've taught high school science, and I've run an environmental education program, and I've learned about behavior change and done research and written papers. And so I feel like those experiences have really helped me as I've grown in my career at City4 Commons.
I'm trying to think of like what to focus on, but doing your PhD, I think there's kind of like a path that is very like go into academia and you stay in academia, you become a professor. And I think getting out of academia is sometimes very daunting after you've been in it for so long. And that path is very like, it feels like everybody is going on that path. And so taking opportunities that come at you, like I feel like that's motto of today is like I just say yes to things that sound cool. Somebody reached out about one of my dissertation, like my papers that I published, and they wanted to interview me on a podcast, and I was like, okay, sure, this sounds fun. And so I did it, and that is actually part of the reason that I have my job today, because I actually applied at this company that I work for during my PhD thinking like, this is a good opportunity. This is an amazing organization. I'm never going to get the job, but it's good like practice to do. I didn't get the job, but I got really far into the process. And then a year later, I had done this like podcast, and they had listened to the podcast, and I had stayed in touch with them. And then I had a PhD, and then all these things kind of led to help build my confidence to be like, okay, no, yeah, like when I first applied, I was like, I'm just doing this for fun. I'll never get it. And now I'm like, wait, no, I'm actually like a great candidate for this job. And so just like she had listened to the podcast, and like all these things had just fallen into place. And then in that job, I have been able to become promoted. And I think in part that is like due to my master's of conservation leadership, where I am understanding how to communicate and work with so many different types of people on so many different teams, just like Evan was saying. I've become that person who can work on any team within the organization. And I do, like, I've turned that into my role of being this quant person that can just pop in and help people out and pop out, just because I've like, been able to work in so many different types of situations. So
see, apply for the job.
Apply for the job, even if it's just the first time you apply.
Yeah.
Then you can apply again.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing, just going back to both mentioned that confidence piece. And I'm working in the fire space, and I come from Indiana where fire is not really a thing. So I didn't have a background in it. And I think that this program really helped to teach like a couple things that are important, like humility and curiosity, staying curious. But then also that confidence piece of like, sometimes you do step up. And I think our coursework and our program like helped to teach me that I can become a subject matter expert on this. I know how to do the research here. I know how to communicate with other people. I will be curious to what other folks have to say and can contribute to the conversation. And then that really helps to set you up for those careers. But yeah, being confident and apply for the job. I really like that. It resonated quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, for the last question, it is, what advice would you give someone considering the program you graduated from? Big question.
Apply for the job. Well, I think I'll get us started. It's been evoked already tonight. And it sounds cliche, but sometimes cliches are real, and sometimes they are cliches. One of my favorite professors used to say the obvious isn't obvious until somebody says it out loud. So there's like a role for the person saying it out loud, right? Which is you get out of it what you put into it. So my program, like I said, it's mostly, learn on your own time, remote work. It would have been easy for me to phone it in. I could have done the minimum. I didn't need to build relationships with people who weren't living in the state. I didn't need to go for that walk with Jamie, my professor. And I would have been fine. I would have gotten a certificate. I would have graduated. I probably would have gotten decent grades. But all the other intangibles that we've been talking about, the confidence, the network, the support, the friends, this very memorable part of our lives that has launched for some of us our careers came in the extra moments. And in the extra energy that we invested in the program, and the program paid it back to us. So yeah, it's a cliche. You get out of it what you put into it, but put something into it because you'll get something out of it. So that's my advice is think about what it is you are trying to get out. What is your goal, and then invest in it. You're going to do it. Might as well do it really well, and then maybe you'll be on a panel at CSU someday and trying to inspire other students to do the same.
Yeah, I will jump in because I completely agree. I think that extra moments is really what has helped me a ton. Like I said before, like just with all the people that I interacted with, all the guest presenters and all the professors, like actually making the time, it'd be so easy after the guest presenter is done to just like leave because the class is over. But then I would go up and I'd, shake hands, even if I wasn't necessarily interested in the position that they were in or the industry. I was still like, hey, like my name is Mike, like tell me about your career and that kind of stuff. And like just making that connection and putting that extra effort in is definitely where I got success out of it. And then being open-minded, I think was important too. I never saw myself working for a hotel when I went into the program. I was like, oh, I don't need to pay attention to the hotel stuff. But then I did, obviously, and I like was listening to it, and then I got a job immediately, or did well in the class, and then got a job immediately after in a hotel world, which really launched my career trajectory. And so, like being open-minded and just being willing to learn things that you don't really aren't really that focused on, while also focusing on the things that you do love and are interested in, I think was super beneficial. And just being open-minded to different perspectives when you're talking about whatever the project is as well. And so, yeah, those extra moments and open-minded would be my advice.
You folks invoked curiosity a couple of times from CLTL. That resonated with me.
Yeah, I like you get out of it what you put in, and the open-mindedness as well. But that, can't state that enough. Just like your curiosity and your effort to go the extra mile on some of those things that can lead to other opportunities. And I know that was the case for me, especially with GIS, and then also looking into some of the conservation ag things that I was interested in from that. I think also one thing I would say is there's a reason you're looking into the program that you're looking into. Fun with that. You don't have to have everything figured out. I certainly did not. I certainly would not have pictured myself here or working for the organization that I am now, the position that I am now. But I think too, saying yes to those cool opportunities, you don't have to have it all figured out. So go with what it is that's drawing you to that and go along for the ride, and see where it takes you. It could be a really cool place. So
I think before starting, I was initially looking at what program do I want to be in? This program looks cool, this program looks cool. But I think for a more research-based program, what was more important was the professor. What professors are doing the research that I'd be curious about. Mm-hmm. And so maybe it's different than some other programs that are more or less research focused, more project focused. But that was one really helpful switch that I made before I started that really led me to a good situation here at CSU. And then, yeah, I think what everyone's saying really resonates as well. I think showing up as human and not trying to put on a facade that I'm perfect and I have it all put together on day one was really helpful to be able to build connections. I remember one of my first classes, we got paired up to talk about how things are going, how's this first week been? And my partner was like, things are awful, it's so hard to move. And I was like, me too, everything is so new. And I feel just being human, if you feel comfortable with that, with the people that you're around, really helps set that base for growing and learning and growing together, right? It's not an individual thing, but it's like we're all learning and growing through this program together. So yeah, I think research programs, think about the professor and then showing up as human.
Yeah, thinking about PhD specifically, the person that you're working with is key. I was lucky that I got to work very closely with the advisor that I had later on as a research assistant. And so I knew that I could work with her. I knew how she worked, and that really, like, you know, I was able to get through my PhD pretty efficiently because of that. But I will say, if you're considering a PhD, there's so many things that I had no idea about going into it. So talk to people. You can talk to me, you can talk to Kaya, you can talk to anyone who has ever been through it. Everyone has a very different experience. But like, it's not for everyone, but that doesn't mean like you shouldn't consider it. It's also not like something that only like these people do over here. It's like, I'm just a normal person, you know, I'm just a human. So it's not just for like the nerdiest of nerdy people. Like you can still do applied things, and you don't have to become a professor. But again, I will say it is not for everyone. I've said that multiple times. So really, really talk to people is what I would say. And really figure out if there's something that you are super interested in and you want to go through and get your PhD in that. Talk to people. Ask questions. See what it actually entails.
Good segue.
Awesome. So now we're going to open up the floor for a Q&A. So if anyone has any questions about the program.
We got some folks here and online. If you have any questions, you can just chime in and we can hear you, or you can put them in the chat.
Let's hear it.
What are your guys' thoughts on grad school or like a PhD program right out of college versus like waiting a little bit and like playing outside, or just like having a full career, things like that?
That's an awesome question.
I'll chime in. I honestly, it depends on your support system, I will say. I am very thankful that I took the time to kind of just like bounce around and not like enter the real world, quote unquote, for a long time, or for a couple of years. I will say I did it more than I intended to, and maybe find the right balance there. But I think it was super beneficial after my undergrad to then like go out and just like play around for a little bit and then be able to go in. But that being said, I know that that's not the case that for everyone, and not everyone can do that. But I did enjoy it, and it's if you can, I'd recommend it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a deeply personal question. So when I finished undergrad, I was convinced I was going to be a newspaper reporter. And so if I had not tried, if I had not said, all right, let's give this a go, and I worked at a newspaper for a while and then worked at several other places for a while, I wouldn't have figured out what the parts of it I liked were and what the parts I didn't like were, and I would have chosen a very different graduate degree program, and it would have led me down a very different path. So there was a level of discernment, and I liked it for like, I wanted my name on a byline, right? Like I liked the ego of it, which is fine, but I needed to do it for a while to figure that out. So then having the professional experience was really grounding for me, and figuring out what is it that I like, what is it that I don't like, and then how do I want this to look like in my life, as opposed to somebody else's like vision or a portrayal of what that looks like externally to me. But that being said, if my true real passion had been journalism and not been my name on a byline, maybe that would have been fine. And going into grad school right out of school would have helped me get there faster and supported that journey for me. So I don't think there's a real like a hard and fast, like you have to go to school, stay in school for as long as possible until you have everything figured out. But there's also no magic number of like work experience years that are going to get you to that decision point either. So I'm glad. Before I came to CSU, I did an MBA program, and it was for other professionals. So other people who had five plus years of professional experience. So I got to like play in the sandbox with people who had made similar choices to me. But there was also a different program that was like straight out of undergrad. You don't necessarily have relationships or like experience managing up. Here's your sandbox. That works too. And there was integration. So I think it's really a choose your own adventure kind of opportunity, and probably won't make the wrong choice.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm gonna jump in again. I apologize, but I will echo, like, I wasn't just a ski bum. I was also like trying my hand at a few different careers, and my undergraduate didn't really pan out to a career. I didn't graduate from CSU, so don't worry. But it was nice to have that experience to be able to like try my hand at a few different things and be like, okay, well, this isn't exactly what I want. And then as a ski bum, I was like, hey, I really love this community around the ski industry. And that's why the MTM program was perfect, because it was like, oh, this is tourism. This is how I can get my real job. And it was like a great pipeline to be able to like explore a little bit, understand what I wanted to do, and then be able to like find that path to do it. So definitely agree. I think that's like, there's the benefit of being able to explore the world a little bit before you jump into a program. But I know, again, that's not for everyone.
Sorry. I did go straight through.
Yeah.
I went undergrad, master's, PhD, all the way through. I was always trying to take a break. I was always like, I'm gonna get a job and I'm gonna get real world experience. And then I said again, yes to things, and it just happened that way. And I still think that I could have benefited from having that real world experience. I was lucky that CLT's Conservation Leadership Master's Program had people that I could talk to who were from all kinds of work experiences, people who had been working for 20 years, people who were also on straight out of undergrad like me. So I could learn from their experiences kind of, through them. But I still always think back through my path, and I'm not saying I did it wrong, but I do think there's always, it's not going to hurt to take a couple years off and even if it's to travel or to do anything to get some experience. So it won't hurt.
Well, and one facet I'll add to that is I couldn't afford it. I had to find a full-time job with the benefit of school. So I could do the tuition remission program. I paid for all of my education that way. So that influenced it too. Like it just wouldn't have been an option if I wasn't working first. And a lot of companies that I've worked for, you had to be there for a couple of years before that benefit kicked in. So there was like an imposed time frame, which is a part to consider too.
Yeah, I was not able to take on more student loans when I graduated my undergrad, for sure. That was a big part of it.
Awesome. Are there any other questions?
I just want to add, I think that's a great question, and it can, I think there's benefits on both paths. And it also emphasizes this theme that seems to be reoccurring, that you don't have to have it all figured out. You never know how one experience might lead to another, and might lead to another. And it's not ever like, this is the one thing that will determine everything, like this one perfect job or a perfect resume, or it's all these different pieces of the puzzle, and you kind of just figure it out as you go along, can help determine your path. But yes, we are 5 minutes over, so if we have one more question, we can do one more. Any online? Oh, we do have an online question. Do any of you see yourself exploring a different dimension in natural resources in the future as a next chapter?
Oh, next chapter.
Oh,
That's a good question.
I can hop in. I'd say yes. I work in the wildfire space, and while that's very interesting, I would like to explore other avenues as well. I think specifically I've started to get into the GIS world, and I think there's just a ton of applications there. And so again, tying it back to conservation leadership, the breadth of experience that I got through that, it kind of opened my eyes to a lot of different opportunities. And so do I know where that opportunity is? No. I think I'll keep myself open to cool and interesting opportunities down the road, and just continuing to seek out things that help to make me a more well-rounded professional to set myself up for whatever that opportunity is down the road.
Yeah, I think personally for me, I'm more of like a month-to-month planner for day-to-day than like a year-to-year.
That stresses me out. I love that for you.
First for me. And I will say, I think I'm really focused on like, how do I do my job more effectively? How do I apply the behavior change tactics in a like better and better as I learn? And so that's my focus now. I would love eventually to apply more like research to what I do and see if there's ways that we can do better jobs of evaluation in this space. And yeah, curious to explore that more.
Awesome. Yeah, just one example. My job, I evaluate our programs, and one of our goals is to get more into financial metrics, and I'm like, I guess that is a dimension of human dimensions, but it's not something I have much experience with, so I'm excited to learn more. So I'm like with human dimensions, there's always more dimensions to learn and become a subject matter expert in. And if you like learning, that's really good. I like it.
Yeah, I'll just add, I think, agreed with all that. Like, I'm obviously was not intending when I graduated to be like working for the most corporate industry there is most corporate company there is in the industry rather, but I did some nonprofit work as well, and like just kind of found my way bouncing between jobs. And I think that, you know, you're never in the path for good. I think there's always an opportunity to jump to something new, always apply for that job. I think, I'm definitely open to a different dimension for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's been so wonderful hearing from you guys. If we could give them all a round of applause.
Yeah. Thanks, folks, for joining online. Thanks for joining online, everyone. Thank you all so much.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Really. Did we do it? Did we save the daylight?